question of transfer of surplus RBI reserves to the central government has also turned into a political one with sharp rhetoric coming in, especially from the Congress party. Former Congress President and Member of Parliament Rahul Gandhi had quite a sharp response, even accusing the government of stealing from the RBI. Earlier this evening, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman responded to that statement by Rahul Gandhi. Let me just play that out for you.
मुझे जब भी राहुल गांधी जी चोरी, चोर ये सब बातें उठाते हैं ना, एक विषय याद आता है। वो बहुत प्रयत्न किए, चोर चोर चोरी चोरी बोल करके जनता ने उसको सटीक जवाब दिए। उसके बाद भी वही शब्दों को मैं उपयोग करूंगा। इससे क्या निकलता है अर्थ? कांग्रेस पार्टी कम से कम रिजर्व बैंक के मामले में उनके यहाँ जो भी फिनांस मिनिस्टर्स थे, जितने भी सीनियर्स थे, उन सब से बात करने के बाद उनका आरोप डालना चाहिए था।
Okay, that was the response from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, essentially to a tweet by Rahul Gandhi accusing the government of stealing from the RBI. Now, the issue of whether there should be an extra surplus transfer or not has been a hot potato one for a while now. And of course, we've been discussing it from various angles on the show. But let me get in the political and economic angle to this. From Rajeev Gowda. Mr. Gowda, welcome to the show. Rajeev Gowda, of course, is a senior Congress leader and has been a former director at the RBI as well. Mr. Gowda, do you think it's actually fair to call this transfer stealing or loot? I can understand the political point and I can understand some of the concerns that have been raised in the past. But in light of what the economic framework actually says, don't you think it's gone a bit too far?
It's a question of situating this in a historic context. It's a question of situating it in the current economic context. If you look at it, historic transfers, you will see that the magnitude of transfers is a fraction of what has been transferred yesterday from the RBI to the government. If you think about the larger economic context, it is clear that the country and the economy is in doldrums. And desperate times are calling for desperate measures on the part of this government. And the desperate measure that they're using, something that they're used to, which is destroying institutions and their credibility in order to achieve whatever story that they're trying to portray before the people of India. This, unfortunately, we've seen this before with demonetization, and this is demonetization part 2, you could say, where one of the most crucial independent regulatory institutions, which is vital for running our banking and financial sector, is potentially being weakened. I know there are reports which suggest that basically some amount of extra surplus reserves can be passed on to the government. But why did a former deputy governor of the Reserve Bank of India resign? Why did a former governor of the Reserve Bank of India resign on issues which were related to this exact same point? Because they are concerned about the strength, the credibility, the ability of the RBI to be able to weather situations like recessions, situations like the banking and NBFC crisis. Now, I was also a director on the Central Board of the RBI.
Yes.
I am very concerned because of that association as well with what this is going to do to the RBI's ability to tide over crises over time.
Okay, Mr. Gowda, let me come to you on a couple of points. One is that these are recommendations by the Bimal Jalan committee, a committee that was put in place by the RBI itself. It also puts into place some kind of buffers. It puts in place a contingent risk buffer of 5.5 to 6.5%. So the impression that is being given out that, the RBI is being raided and, left completely empty by the government just for its short-term needs. Don't you think that that's slightly a misleading one? There should be some nuance, and I want to call upon, the concerns you mentioned as a former director of the RBI and ask what are those concerns then?
See, there are multiple points of view. The Bimal Jalan committee is also a committee which has very experienced former governors and deputy governors of the RBI on it. So I give them due respect. But you also have a CAFRAL report, which is Amartya Lahiri and others have authored that, which actually takes the opposite point of view. Viral Acharya and Urjit Patel had a very different perspective. So I would not agree with the notion that this is a settled issue. So therefore, in a context like this, it is better to be risk averse. It is better to err or not on the side of 5.5%, but something much more than 6.5%. If you're looking at what should be the magnitude of the reserves, that, it's not as if the RBI doesn't transfer surpluses every year, provide a dividend to the government, etc. But the nature of the politics that has happened behind the scenes, Mr. Subhash Garg and his antagonistic relationship both in the committee as well as with the RBI over the last few months and years, and then his eventual transfer. All of these, and resignation in fact,
but
all of them suggest that there is a larger story here, not exactly what you're seeing, based on just the Bimal Jalan report.
Perhaps, but I'm just going back to the point you made about Mr. S.C. Garg. If that was the case, the narrative that you're now putting forward, then that should put some of those concerns to ease. That a considered view has been taken, that a middle path has been tread by the Bimal Jalan committee report. And shouldn't we then leave it to the wisdom of the RBI, which has sustained attempts at government interference in the past many times? It's almost a part of the history between the relationship of the RBI and the finance ministry.
See, it's actually very important that the RBI's institutional integrity and independence be absolute. And, there is enough. The RBI governor is appointed by the government, so it's not as if there are no checks and balances and things of that sort. Every position there, every director, including me, was appointed by the then government. So there are enough checks and balances, but these institutions have different agendas. And the government, I remember from Subbarao's time and Raghuram Rajan's time, they were both governors when I was a director, there was always this concern about government deficits. And that is a concern that has not gone away. And the impact that would have on inflation. So right now, the commentary on all this, the analysis has been fairly muted. But if, and the finance minister, from what I understand, has also said that she does not have a plan yet for how this money is going to be utilized, right? But will this, given the extraordinary demand slowdown, the fact that we were a few months ago even discussing deflation, especially in core sectors and things like that, it's perfectly possible that this may not have the inflationary impact that we used to worry about in previous years. But when these sorts of desperate measures are being undertaken, it's important for us to understand also, where is this going to be used? For what? Are you going to recapitalize banks? Is that the chief economic advisor calls this a moral hazard problem, and that's always been there as well. And on the other hand, are you going to use this to paper over and close the fiscal deficit? You sold us a set of numbers in Parliament saying this is the true deficit, when in reality more reports are coming out which suggest that the deficit is about 2.5% more, 5.8% of GDP. This is the sort of thing that's coming out now. So basically, the government is unable to manage the economy. Yeah. The economy is in doldrums. Where do you think the money should be used, Mr.
Gowda?
Demand has collapsed. Every sector, C plus I plus G plus X minus M, every dimension is in trouble.
Okay.
And so then you go and raid the RBI. That's why the word raid is appropriate, because this is not something that is coming out from some reasoned solution to problems that the country is facing.
Look, there are several views on this, Mr. Gowda, if you can hear me, please. There are several views on this which are coming in, and one of them is, of course, that this should not have happened, it's a raid. There are others that are, that this is essentially the government's money, and these excess surpluses have come in place in part due to open market operations that the RBI has conducted recently. In part because of the devaluation of the rupee and, other gains that they have made. So that may to some extent explain the figure. You kept saying that this should not be used in XYZ manner. Where do you think the money should be used?
That is the prerogative and the discretion and the responsibility of the government. If I were the finance minister, I'd give you an answer.
No,
Wait
because
a few years.
because I'm asking only, Mr. Gowda, because you made it a point to list out uses which you would be uncomfortable with. Then as an opposition party, you must give an alternative.
I think, I would disagree with the chief economic advisor. I would suggest that we recapitalize the banking sector and fix the problems there and ensure better regulatory mechanisms to ensure that that moral hazard problem doesn't become worse, because unless the banking sector is fixed and fixed early, this is something that the Modi Sarkar should have done 5-6 years ago, right? As soon as they came to office and started to see the NPA crisis loom, and they allowed it to balloon and get out of control. Anyway, if we fix the banking sector, if we ensure that there's more credit available, and that then at rates that are affordable, if then that translates into investments and a revival of the economy, then that's something that I would think is probably the best use of this resource at this point. There's also huge amounts of talk about 100 lakh crores going for infrastructure. That may be another appropriate utilization, but I saw that in the BJP manifesto, and I've never considered that a credible promise. Yeah.
All right, we'll wait and watch. Thank you so much, Mr. Gowda, for joining us today with your views on a big move by the RBI, something that has taken a political turn, but Mr. Gowda always gives an economic perspective to it as well. Well, that's all the time we have on the India Development Debate. We'd like to thank you for joining this heated debate. The question is not just about the record surplus from the RBI. The question at the heart of it is about the autonomy of the central bank. And that perhaps is the most important one of all. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hope to see you back here tomorrow.